Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're stepping into a story that begins with a front door opening on a quiet afternoon and a son standing there with an ultimatum. This is Narratives of Aunt Maris, a place where Black women's stories in America are told honestly, with all the whispers, paperwork, and late-night prayers still attached. Picture this. The house still smells like your late husband's cologne. The sympathy cards are stacked on the table. Your robe is still tied from another long day of grief. And the child you raised looks you straight in the eye and says, "Either you give us this house or we'll put you away." The mug in your hand is warm, but the room suddenly feels icy. In moments like that, it's not just your home on the line. It's your dignity, your memories, your entire life story. And here's the hard reality check. If you ever find yourself in a moment like this, you might not walk away with your sanity or your heart still intact. So before you get too comfortable, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And while you're here, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing how far these stories travel from big cities to small towns, from night shift breaks to quiet bedrooms where you're finally alone with your thoughts. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a little soft background noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. After my husband's funeral, my son showed up at my door with an ultimatum. "Either you give us this house or you're going to a nursing home," I said. Perfect. But first, let me show you something about your wife's pregnancy. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The doorbell rang at exactly 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, 3 months after Henry's funeral. I was still in my robe, clutching my third cup of coffee, staring at the stack of sympathy cards I couldn't bring myself to throw away. The sound made me jump. Nobody visited anymore, not since Henry died. Through the peephole, I saw Darius's familiar silhouette. But something was different about his posture. Rigid, determined. Behind him stood Kendra, my daughter-in-law, her hand protectively cradling her pregnant belly, 7 months along now. She wore that flowing dress she always chose when she wanted to look more vulnerable than she really was. "Mom, we need to talk." Darius's voice was cold the moment I opened the door. No hug. No, "How are you holding up?" Just business. They walked past me into the living room like they owned the place. Kendra settled carefully into Henry's favorite chair, the one I still couldn't sit in myself. She let out a small sigh, one hand still on her stomach, the other touching her lower back dramatically. "The baby's been so active today," she said, looking directly at me with those wide, innocent eyes that had fooled everyone in this family except Henry. He'd seen right through her from day one, but I'd ignored his warnings. Family harmony. I told myself, keep the peace. Darius remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back like he was giving a business presentation. My son looked so much like his father in that moment. But Henry would never have worn such a cold expression in our home. "Mom, sit down," he said. I perched on the edge of the couch, my coffee cup trembling slightly in my hands. Something was very wrong. The air felt thick with tension, like the moments before a thunderstorm. "Kendra and I have been talking," Darius began, his voice measured and practiced, "about your situation here. living alone in this big house after Dad. My throat tightened. My situation. Kendra shifted in the chair, wincing slightly. We're worried about you, Maris. This house is so isolated, and you're here all by yourself. What if something happened? What if you fell down those stairs? The stairs Henry and I had climbed together for 32 years. The same stairs where Darius had taken his first steps. Where we'd sat reading bedtime stories when he was small. I'm managing fine, I said quietly. Darius shook his head. You're not, Mom. You barely leave the house. You're not taking care of yourself. Look at you. His gesture encompassed my unwashed hair, my rumpled robe, the tissue scattered on the coffee table. This isn't healthy. Heat rose in my cheeks. Yes, I was grieving. Yes, some days were harder than others, but I was surviving. I was learning to live without the man who'd been my partner for 35 years. We found a wonderful place for you, Kendra said, her voice syrupy with false concern. Sunset Gardens. It's not far from our new house, so we can visit regularly. New house. My confusion must have shown on my face. We need this house. Mom, Darius said bluntly. The baby's coming, but in our apartment is too small. Kendra is having complications with the pregnancy. She needs space. Quiet. Nursery. I set down my coffee cup with shaking hands. You want me to move to a nursing home so you can have my house? It's an assisted living facility, Kendra corrected gently. Very nice. They have activities. Other people your age. You wouldn't be so lonely. Lonely. The word hit like a slap. Yes, I was lonely. Devastatingly. Achingly lonely. But this house held every memory of my marriage. Every trace of the life Henry and I had built together. The kitchen where we'd cooked Sunday dinners for Darius when he was growing up. The garden Henry had planted for me. The bedroom where we'd loved each other for over 3 decades. I don't want to leave, I whispered. Darius's jaw tightened. Mom, you're being selfish. We're trying to start our family, and you're making this about your feelings. Selfish. My own son called me selfish for wanting to stay in my own home. Kendra struggled to stand, one hand braced against the chair arm, the other on her belly. She moved closer to me, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a compassionate tone. I know this is hard, but think about your grandchild. Don't you want him to have the best possible start in life? This house has so much room for him to grow up, to play, to be happy. She was using the baby against me. My grandchild, whom I'd already fallen in love with. Sight unseen. I'd been knitting blankets, buying tiny clothes, dreaming of holding him. The nursery would be perfect in your old sewing room, she continued, right next to the master bedroom, so I can hear him at night when he needs me. My sewing room, where I'd made Darius's Halloween costumes, mended his clothes, created countless projects over the years. She was already dividing up my house in her mind. How long do I have? I asked, my voice barely audible. Darius and Kendra exchanged a look I didn't understand. Some silent communication passed between them. The baby's due in 2 months, Darius said. We'd need to close on the house before then. Get settled, set up the nursery. 2 months. He was giving me 2 months to abandon everything I'd built with his father. And if I say no, another look between them. This one was colder. Kendra sighed heavily, her hand moving in slow circles on her belly. Maris, we're not trying to be cruel, but if you won't make this transition willingly, we might have to explore other options. Other options, the thread hung in the air like smoke. What kind of other options? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Darius's face was stone. Competency evaluation. Medical assessment of your ability to live independently. You're showing signs of depression, isolation, inability to maintain your personal hygiene or the house. The house looked exactly as it always had. Maybe with a few more dishes in the sink, a little more dust on the furniture, but signs of incompetence. That was a lie. And we all knew it. You'd have me declared incompetent. The betrayal was so complete I could barely process it. "We'd do whatever's necessary to protect you and our family," Kendra said softly. "Sometimes people need help making difficult decisions." They had it all planned out. The nursing home, the legal threats, the manipulation using my unborn grandchild. This wasn't a conversation. It was an ambush. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. "I need time to think." "Of course," Kendra said quickly. "Take all the time you need. But remember the baby's coming, whether we're ready or not." They gathered their things, Darius helping Kendra with her coat as if she were made of spun glass. At the door, he turned back to me. "Mom, I hope you'll make the right choice for everyone involved." After they left, I sank back onto the couch and stared at the empty chair where Kendra had sat. Henry's chair. She'd claimed it so naturally, like she belonged there more than I did. But something nagged at me about her pregnancy timeline. Something that didn't quite add up. And those phone conversations I'd overheard during family dinners. The ones where she'd stepped outside or into another room, speaking in whispers. Maybe it was time I paid closer attention to what my daughter-in-law was really hiding. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered through the house like a ghost, touching the walls Henry and I had painted together, the banister he'd refinished by hand, the kitchen counters where we'd shared morning coffee for decades. Every corner held a memory they wanted me to abandon. I found myself in Darius's old bedroom, now converted to Henry's home office. The walls were still covered with my son's academic achievements. Honor roll certificates, graduation photos, his college diploma. Henry had been so proud of our boy. "He's got a good heart, Maris," he'd always said. "He just needs to find his backbone." When did Darius stop having a good heart? When did he become someone who could look his grieving mother in the eye and threaten her with a competency hearing? The answer came to me as I stared at his wedding photo on the desk. 3 years ago. That's when everything changed. I remembered the first time Darius brought Kendra home. She was beautiful in that effortless way that made other women feel inadequate, perfectly styled curls pulled into a sleek, low bun, designer clothes that fit like they were made for her, a smile that could charm anyone. Henry and I had been so happy that our 30-year-old son had finally found someone. "She's lovely," I'd whispered to Henry that first evening as we watched Kendra charm our dinner guests. A little young for him, but lovely. Henry had frowned, stirring his coffee slowly. "Pretty package. I wonder what's inside." I should have listened to him then. Henry was a good judge of character. He'd built a successful business by reading people accurately. But I was so desperate for Darius to settle down, to give us grandchildren, that I ignored the warning signs. Moi. The signs started small. Kendra would arrive for Sunday dinners and immediately compliment the house, but with subtle suggestions for improvement. "This wallpaper is so vintage. Maris, very retro." Or, "If you opened up this wall between the kitchen and dining room, you'd have such better flow." She never directly criticized, just planted seeds. Made me question choices Henry and I had made together. Decisions that had served us well for 3 decades. Then came the gentle corrections about how I treated Darius. "Oh, he doesn't eat beef anymore. Didn't he tell you I've got him on this amazing healthy diet?" Or, "He's been so stressed at work lately. Maybe we shouldn't burden him with too many family obligations." Slowly, steadily, she began inserting herself between my son and me. Family dinners became less frequent. Phone calls grew shorter. When I'd call Darius at home, Kendra would answer and explain that he was too tired to talk or busy with work or not feeling well. "I'll have him call you back," she'd promise sweetly. but he rarely did. The worst part was how she made me doubt myself. When I tried to talk to Darius about feeling shut out, she'd be there with a reasonable explanation. "Your mom seems a little overwhelmed lately, honey. Maybe she's taking things too personally." Or, "I think your mother might be going through a difficult adjustment period. We should be patient with her." Patient with me, like I was the problem. Henry saw it all happening. "She's isolating him," he'd warned me. "Classic manipulation. Make him think you're the unreasonable one. Make him think she's protecting him from you." But when I tried to discuss it with Darius, he'd get defensive. "Kendra is not trying to cause problems. Mom, she's just looking out for our relationship, and maybe you should try to understand her perspective." The worst incident happened last Christmas, 2 months before Henry's heart attack. We'd invited them for Christmas Eve dinner, our family tradition. Kendra arrived looking beautiful as always, but something was off. She kept stepping outside to take phone calls, claiming it was work emergencies. During dinner, her phone rang again. She glanced at it and her face went pale. "I'm so sorry, but I need to take this," she said, already standing. "It's urgent." She disappeared into the hallway, but I could hear her voice through the thin walls. Not the words, just the tone, intimate, soft. The way you talk to someone you care about. Not a work colleague calling about an emergency on Christmas Eve. When she returned, her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright with excitement. "Everything okay?" Henry asked pointedly. "Oh, yes, just a client crisis. You know how it is." But her smile was too wide, too forced. Later, when Darius was in the bathroom, Henry cornered her in the kitchen. "Interesting work emergency," he said quietly. "Most businesses are closed on Christmas Eve." Kendra's mask slipped for just a moment. I saw something cold flash in her eyes before the sweet smile returned. "Small business owners never really get time off," she said lightly. "I'm sure you understand." Henry nodded slowly. "I understand more than you think." After they left that night, Henry was quiet for a long time. Finally, he turned to me with worry etched on his face. "She's trouble, Maris. Big trouble. And Darius is too blind to see it." "What can we do?" I'd asked helplessly. "Wait," Henry said grimly. "People like her always reveal themselves eventually. We just have to hope Darius wakes up before she destroys him completely." But Henry died before he could protect our son. Before he could help Darius see what Kendra really was. Now, standing in this room full of memories, I thought about that Christmas Eve phone call, about the flush in Kendra's cheeks, the excitement she'd tried to hide, about the timeline of her pregnancy. When had she announced she was expecting March? She'd said she was 6 weeks along, which would put conception in early February. Right around the time she was taking all those mysterious work calls, but something didn't add up. In May, she'd complained about morning sickness being so severe. "I'm only in my first trimester," she'd moaned dramatically. "This is supposed to be the easy part." As if she'd conceived in February, she would have been well into her second trimester by May. Either she was lying about the conception date, or my breath caught in my throat, or the baby wasn't conceived when she claimed it was. Maybe not even with who she claimed. I sat down heavily in Henry's desk chair, my mind racing. Could Kendra be lying about the pregnancy timeline? Could there be someone else? I thought about all those phone calls. The mysterious work emergencies. The way she'd pulled Darius away from family gatherings early, claiming she wasn't feeling well. The way she'd started pushing me out of their lives more aggressively after she got pregnant. Henry's voice echoed in my memory. People like her always reveal themselves eventually. Maybe it was time I helped that revelation along. I opened Henry's desk drawer and found his old address book. Somewhere in there was the number for the private investigator he'd used when we'd had problems with employee theft at his company. A thorough, discreet man who specialized in finding the truth people tried to hide. My hands trembled as I reached for the phone. Tomorrow, I would start looking for answers. Because if Kendra thought she could steal my house, destroy my relationship with my son, and use a baby that might not even be his to do it, she had severely underestimated Maris Walker. The game was about to change, and this time I intended to win. The next morning, I called Marcus Carter, the private investigator Henry had used 5 years earlier. His voice was gravelly but kind when I explained what I needed. Mrs. Walker, I remember your husband well. Good man. I'm sorry for your loss. There was genuine warmth in his tone. Now, what can I help you with? I found myself hesitating. Was I really going to spy on my own daughter-in-law? But then I remembered Darius's cold ultimatum, Kendra's calculated manipulation, and the way she'd sat in Henry's chair like she belonged there. I need you to investigate someone. My daughter-in-law, Kendra Walker. I have reason to believe she might not be faithful to my son. Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's delicate territory. Mrs. Walker, are you sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes the truth is harder to live with than suspicion. My son is about to lose everything because of this woman, I said firmly. His marriage, his relationship with me, maybe even his future if that baby isn't his. I need to know the truth. All right, then. I'll need some basic information about her routine, where she works, her habits. Over the next hour, I gave Marcus everything I knew about Kendra's life, her job at a marketing firm downtown, her yoga classes on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, her claimed doctor appointments that seemed to happen with unusual frequency. I'll start with basic surveillance, Marcus explained. See who she talks to, where she goes when she says she's working late or at appointments. If there's someone else in the picture, we'll find out. After I hung up, I felt both relief and guilt. Was I doing the right thing? But every time doubt crept in. I remembered Kendra's threat about competency hearings, and my resolve hardened. While Marcus worked, I decided to do some investigating of my own. I started paying closer attention to Kendra's social media, something I'd never bothered with before. Her Instagram was full of pregnancy photos, but as I scrolled through the timeline, inconsistencies jumped out at me. In a post from late March, she'd written 12 weeks and glowing, but the timestamp showed March 28th. If she was 12 weeks along, then she would have conceived in early January, not February, as she'd told us. I screenshot the post and continued digging. In April, she'd shared a photo of an ultrasound with the caption, "Our little miracle at 16 weeks." But April 15th would make her conception date even earlier, sometime in mid-December. The dates didn't match what she'd told the family. More importantly, they didn't match when she and Darius had been together consistently. I remembered now that Darius had been traveling heavily for work in December and early January, closing a big deal in Seattle. He'd been gone for weeks at a time. My phone rang, interrupting my research. It was Marcus. "Mrs. Walker, I've got some preliminary information. Nothing conclusive yet, but interesting. Your daughter-in-law has been making regular visits to a medical building downtown, but not to an OB/GYN office like you'd expect for prenatal care." My heart began to race. What kind of doctor? That's what I'm trying to figure out. The building houses several practices: internal medicine, cardiology, psychiatry. But here's the thing. She's been going there since before she announced her pregnancy. Monthly visits. Sometimes twice a month. Could you find out which doctor? Working on it. I've also started following her routine. She does go to yoga on Tuesdays, but on Thursdays, when she says she's at yoga, she's actually meeting someone at a coffee shop on 5th Street. Same person each time. Well-dressed man in his 50s. Wedding ring, expensive car. I gripped the phone tighter. "Can you get photos?" "Already have some. I'll email them to you tonight along with my preliminary report." After Marcus hung up, I sat in Henry's chair, my mind spinning. Medical appointments at the wrong kind of practice. secret meetings with a married man, pregnancy timelines that didn't add up. But I needed more than suspicions. I needed proof. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I drove to Kendra's workplace. The marketing firm occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise. I parked across the street and waited, feeling foolish but determined. At 3:30, I saw her emerge from the building. But instead of heading to her car, she walked 2 blocks to a small cafe. Through the window, I watched her sit across from a man who matched Marcus's description. Older, well-dressed, wedding ring catching the light as he reached across the table to touch her hand. The intimacy of the gesture made my stomach churn. This wasn't a business meeting. This was 2 people who knew each other very well, who had history together. I fumbled for my phone and managed to take several photos through the cafe window. The man's face was clearly visible, and so was the tender way he was looking at my daughter-in-law. They talked for nearly an hour. I watched Kendra laugh at something he said, watched her lean forward to whisper something that made him smile. When they parted, he kissed her cheek and held her hand for a long moment before walking away. That evening, Marcus's email arrived with professional photographs that were much clearer than mine. The man's license plate was visible, and Marcus had already run a preliminary check. Richard Blackwood, age 52, married with 2 teenage children, executive VP at Meridian Financial, home address in Westchester County, no criminal record. But interesting financial details. His wife filed for separation 6 months ago. Though they're still legally married, messy divorce proceedings, custody battle over the kids. I stared at the photos, my heart pounding. Kendra was having an affair with a married man going through a divorce. A man with money, status, and everything to lose if his wife found out about a pregnant mistress. But was the baby his, and did Darius have any idea? I spent the next 2 days watching and waiting. Marcus continued his surveillance while I played the part of the grieving widow considering their ultimatum. When Darius called to check on my decision, I told him I was still thinking it over. "Don't take too long, Mom," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier coldness. Kendra's been having some complications. The stress isn't good for the baby. Complications or guilt about living a lie. On Friday, Marcus called with news that changed everything. "Mrs. Walker, I followed your daughter-in-law to a medical appointment today. Not at the building I mentioned before. This was a legitimate OB/GYN office. But here's the interesting part. I was able to confirm the appointment through a contact of mine who works there. According to her medical records, she's 32 weeks pregnant. Not 28 weeks like she's been telling people." My hands began to shake. What does that mean? It means conception happened in early December, not February. It also means she knew she was pregnant before Christmas, but didn't announce it until March. The timeline crystallized in my mind. December conception. Darius traveling for weeks. Kendra taking mysterious phone calls on Christmas Eve. The married man she'd been seeing regularly. "Marcus," I said slowly. "I think I know whose baby she's carrying, and it's not my son's." That night, I sat in my kitchen with all the evidence spread before me like pieces of a puzzle. Photos of Kendra with Richard Blackwood, medical records proving the pregnancy timeline, social media posts with conflicting dates. The picture was becoming clear, but I needed one final piece of proof, something that would make even Darius see the truth. I picked up my phone and dialed Marcus again. "I need you to dig deeper into Richard Blackwood's financials. If he's been supporting Kendra, there will be evidence. Bank records, credit card statements, anything that shows money changing hands. What are you thinking, Mrs. Walker?" I looked around my kitchen at the home Henry and I had built together. The life Kendra was trying to steal from me. "I'm thinking it's time to stop being the victim in my own story." The confrontation was coming. and this time I would be ready with the truth, all of it. Marcus delivered the final piece of evidence on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week after I'd hired him. I was sitting in my garden, the one Henry had planted for me, when he called with news that would change everything. Mrs. Walker, you were right about the financial connection. Richard Blackwood has been making regular payments to your daughter-in-law for the past 8 months. Monthly transfers of $3,000 always on the 15th. The account is in the name Amara Morrison. My coffee cup trembled in my hands. 8 months. That predates her pregnancy announcement by months. There's more. I traced some of his credit card activity, expensive jewelry purchases, high-end restaurants, a weekend getaway to the Hamptons in January, all during times when your son was traveling for work. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I felt dizzy. Does she know you've been investigating? No, but I think she's getting suspicious about something. Yesterday, she changed her routine, took different routes to work, kept checking over her shoulder. Could be pregnancy paranoia, but my gut says someone tipped her off. My blood ran cold. Tipped her off about what? Maybe nothing. But Mrs. Walker, you need to be careful. If she realizes you know the truth, there's no telling how she might react. Desperate people do desperate things. After Marcus hung up, I sat in Henry's garden for a long time, thinking. I had all the evidence I needed now. Photos, financial records, medical documentation, witness testimony. Enough to prove that Kendra was carrying another man's child while planning to steal my house and destroy my relationship with Darius. But how do you tell your son that his entire life is built on lies? I was still wrestling with that question when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Kendra standing alone on my porch. No Darius this time. Her face was pale. Her usual perfect composure cracked around the edges. My heart hammered as I opened the door. Had she come to confess, to threaten me, to find out what I knew? Maris, she said, her voice strained. We need to talk. I stepped aside to let her in, my mind racing. She moved slowly, one hand pressed against her lower back, the other cradling her belly, but I noticed her eyes were sharp, alert, scanning the room like she was looking for something. Where's Darius? I asked. At work. He doesn't know I'm here. She settled into the living room chair carefully, but not Henry's chair this time. She chose the sofa, positioning herself where she could see both the front door and the hallway. I wanted to talk to you privately. I remained standing, every instinct telling me to be cautious. About what? Kendra's mask of sweet vulnerability was completely gone now. The woman sitting in my living room was calculating. Dangerous. This was who she really was, underneath all the pregnancy glow and innocent smiles. You've been asking questions, she said quietly, about me, about the baby. My mouth went dry, but I kept my expression neutral. I don't know what you mean. A private investigator has been following me. Maris, don't insult my intelligence by pretending you don't know about it. The game was up. I could keep lying, or I could face this head on. I chose the truth. I hired someone to investigate you, yes. And he found some very interesting things. Kendra's jaw tightened, such as the fact that you're 32 weeks pregnant, not 28. Such as your regular meetings with Richard Blackwood. Such as the $24,000 he's paid you over the past 8 months. For a moment, absolute silence filled the room. Then Kendra laughed, a sound devoid of any humor. You have no idea what you're meddling with, she said. I know exactly what I'm meddling with. My son's life, my grandchild's future, my own home that you're trying to steal. Kendra stood up abruptly, her movements sharp despite her pregnancy. Your son is weak, Maris. He always has been. Sweet, but weak. He would never be able to handle the truth about what I really need, about who I really am.
And what is that exactly?
She walked to the window, staring out at Henry's garden. I'm a woman who refuses to settle for mediocrity. Your son makes decent money, but decent isn't enough. Richard can give me the life I deserve. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. So you seduced a married man for his money while pretending to love my son? Love. She turned back to me with contempt. What a luxury for people who can afford it. I grew up in poverty. Maris. Real poverty, not the middle-class struggles you probably think qualify. I swore I'd never be poor again. Never be powerless again. So you decided to destroy other people's lives instead. I decided to survive. Her voice was ice cold now. Richard's divorce will be final in 3 months. His wife gets the house and half the assets, but he keeps his business, his investments, his real wealth. We'll be married before the baby is born. My legs felt weak. I sank into the nearest chair. Darius thinks that baby is his. Darius needs to think that baby is his until I don't need him anymore. She moved closer to me, looming despite her pregnancy. Which is why you're going to keep your mouth shut about everything you think you know. Or what? Her smile was chilling. Or I'll destroy him completely. I know about his gambling problem, the one he's been hiding from you. The credit card debt he's racked up. The money he's borrowed from his 401k. I've been covering his mistakes for months, making him dependent on me. The room seemed to spin. Darius doesn't gamble. Your precious son has been betting on sports online for 2 years. He's lost over $80,000. Richard's money hasn't just been paying for my lifestyle. Maris. It's been keeping Darius from financial ruin. The betrayal was coming from all sides now. My son had gambling debts. My daughter-in-law was blackmailing him. Everything I thought I knew about my family was crumbling. If you expose me, Kendra continued, I'll cut off the financial help. Darius will lose everything, his job, his credit, his future. The shame will destroy him. I stared at her, this woman who had infiltrated my family like a cancer. You're pure evil. I'm practical. She checked her watch with practiced indifference. You have 24 hours to decide. Maris, sign over the house like we discussed. Keep quiet about Richard and the baby. And I'll continue protecting your son's pathetic secrets. Or refuse. And watch me destroy him piece by piece. She headed for the door, then turned back one final time. Oh. And if you're thinking about going to Darius with this information, remember, he's been lying to you too. About the gambling, the debt, why he really needs this house. Ask yourself if your own son can deceive you so easily. Why would he believe you over the woman who's been saving his ass for months? After she left, I sat in my living room for hours, the silence crushing. Everything I thought I knew about my son, my family, my life had been turned upside down. Darius was in debt. Kendra was carrying another man's child. And I was caught in the middle of a web of lies that threatened to destroy us all. But as the shock began to fade, something else took its place. Anger. Pure, cleansing rage. Kendra thought she held all the cards. She thought I was just a grieving widow, too weak and naive to fight back. She thought she could threaten my son and steal my home while carrying another man's baby. She was about to learn that Henry Walker's widow was made of stronger stuff than she imagined. I reached for my phone and dialed Marcus. Marcus, it's Maris Walker. I need you to dig deeper into Kendra's background. Everything, where she came from, who she really is, any secrets she might not want exposed. And I need information about Richard Blackwood's divorce proceedings. Mrs. Walker? Are you sure about this? It sounds like you're preparing for war. I looked around my house, at the life Henry and I had built together, at everything this woman wanted to take from me. That's exactly what I'm preparing for. And this time, I intend to win. Marcus called me at 600 on Friday morning, his voice urgent. Mrs. Walker, you need to hear this. I dug into Kendra's past like you asked. And what I found changes everything. I was already dressed, having barely slept all night. Tell me. Her real name is Amara Morrison. She's got a criminal record. Fraud, identity theft, extortion. She's done this before. Maris. 3 times that I can verify. She finds vulnerable men, gets pregnant by wealthy marks, then blackmails everyone involved. My coffee cup slipped from my hands, shattering on the kitchen floor. 3 times. Portland, Denver, and Phoenix. Always the same pattern. And she targets men with money problems or emotional vulnerabilities, makes them dependent on her, then uses that dependency to extort their families. In Portland, she convinced a gambling addict to sign over his inheritance. In Denver, she got a divorced father to mortgage his house to pay her blackmail money. What happened to those men? Marcus was quiet for a moment. 1 committed suicide. Maris. The shame destroyed him when everything came out. The other 2 are still paying her money to keep quiet about their secrets. I sank into a chair. The magnitude of what we were dealing with finally clear. This wasn't just about infidelity or pregnancy lies. This was about a predator who had targeted my family. There's more, Marcus continued. I've been monitoring her communications. She's planning to disappear after the baby is born. New identity, new city, new victims. But first, she wants to clean out everyone involved. Your son, Richard Blackwood, and you? How long do I have? Based on her pattern, not long. She's in her 3rd trimester now. Once that baby comes, she'll have the ultimate leverage against Richard. She won't need Darius or your house anymore. After Marcus hung up, I sat in my kitchen surrounded by broken coffee cup pieces, thinking about Henry. What would he do in this situation? How would he protect our son from this monster? The answer came to me clearly. Henry would fight. But he would fight smart. I spent the morning making calls, gathering allies. First, I contacted Richard Blackwood's attorney using information Marcus had provided. Then I called Darius's workplace, claiming a family emergency. Finally, I made the hardest call of all. Darius, I need you to come home immediately. Bring Kendra. We need to have a family meeting. Mom, if this is about the house again, it's about the truth, son. It's about things you need to know before it's too late. Something in my voice must have convinced him, because he agreed to come over at 2 p.m. I used the time to prepare carefully. I arranged all the evidence Marcus had gathered on Henry's desk: photographs, financial records, medical documentation, background checks. Then I set up Henry's old tape recorder, the one he'd use for important business meetings. When the doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m., I was ready. Darius looked worried as he entered, but Kendra's expression was pure fury. She knew something was wrong the moment she saw my face. Sit down, both of you, I said calmly. We have a lot to discuss. Mom, what's this about? Darius asked, settling into the couch. He looked older than his 33 years. Stress lines around his eyes I'd never noticed before. Kendra remained standing, her hand protectively over her belly. Maris, we don't have time for games. I have a doctor's appointment in an hour. No, you don't, I said quietly. You don't have any appointment today, just like you haven't been seeing a real obstetrician for most of this pregnancy. The color drained from Kendra's face. Darius looked between us, confused. Mom, what are you talking about? I picked up the first photograph from Henry's desk. I'm talking about this, Darius. Your wife having lunch with Richard Blackwood every Thursday for the past 8 months. Darius stared at the photo, his mouth opening and closing wordlessly. I don't understand. Who is Richard Blackwood? He's the father of the baby your wife is carrying. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Darius's face went white. Kendra stepped backward, her eyes darting toward the door.
"That's a lie," she said, but her voice shook.
I picked up the medical records. Is it according to these documents, you're 32 weeks pregnant, not 28? That puts conception in early December, when Darius was in Seattle for 3 weeks. Medical records can be wrong, Kendra said desperately.
Can bank records be wrong?
I held up the financial statements. $24,000 in payments from Richard Blackwood to Amara Morrison over the past 8 months. Darius's head snapped up. Amara, your name is Kendra. Her real name is Amara Morrison, I continued relentlessly. She's got a criminal record in 3 states for fraud and extortion. She's done this exact same con before, targeting men with gambling problems and vulnerable families. Stop it, Kendra said, her voice rising. Stop lying! But Darius was staring at her now with growing horror. Gambling problems, Mom. I don't have a gambling problem. I felt my heart break a little. Yes, you do, sweetheart. She's been covering your debts for months. That's how she got control over you. The silence that followed was deafening. Darius's face cycled through confusion, realization, and finally devastation as all the pieces clicked into place. The money you gave me for the credit cards, he whispered to Kendra. The help with my 401k loan. You said it was from your savings. It was from Richard Blackwood, I said gently. She's been using his money to make you dependent on her while carrying his child and planning to leave you the moment the baby is born. Darius stood up abruptly, stumbling slightly. Is this true? Any of it? Kendra's mask finally slipped completely. The sweet, vulnerable, pregnant woman disappeared, replaced by someone cold and calculating. Your son is weak, Maris. Just like I told you, she said flatly. He would never have been able to provide the life I deserve. Richard can give me everything. Money, status, security.
What about the baby? Darius asked, his voice breaking.
What about it? It's not yours. It was never yours.
Her cruelty was breathtaking.
I needed a cover story while Richard got divorced. You were convenient. Darius sank back into the chair like he'd been physically struck. Everything we had, it was all fake.
Not fake, she said. Useful.
Kendra moved toward the door. And now it's over. Keep the house. Maris, I don't need it anymore. Richard's buying me a much better one.
No, I said firmly, standing up. It's not over. Kendra turned back, her eyebrows raised. Excuse me?
I walked to Henry's desk and picked up my phone. Richard Blackwood's wife has been very interested to learn about your pregnancy, especially since their divorce proceedings included a clause about adultery affecting asset distribution. Kendra's confidence wavered.
You wouldn't dare.
I already have. Mrs. Blackwood now has copies of all the photos, financial records, and medical documentation. Richard's affair with you just cost him about half his remaining assets. The blood drained from Kendra's face.
You don't understand what you've done. I need that money. I need Richard's support.
You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy my family. I dialed another number.
I'm also calling the police. Fraud, identity theft, extortion. Marcus found evidence of all of it.
Kendra lunged toward me, but her pregnancy made her clumsy.
You can't do this to me. I need that money. I have a baby coming.
That baby deserves better than a mother who's a criminal, I said, stepping out of her reach. The sound of sirens in the distance made Kendra freeze. I must have looked surprised because she smiled bitterly. I called them before I started making my other calls, I explained. I wanted backup in case you decided to get violent. As the police cars pulled into my driveway, Kendra made one last desperate attempt.
Darius, please, you know me. You love me. Don't let her destroy our family.
But Darius was staring at her like he was seeing her for the first time.
I don't know you at all, he said quietly. I never did. The next few hours passed in a blur of police questions, evidence collection, and statements.
Kendra Amara was arrested on multiple charges, though she was released on bail due to her pregnancy. Richard Blackwood was also facing charges, his marriage and career in ruins. As the sun began to set, I found myself sitting in Henry's garden with Darius. My son looked broken, aged years in the span of a single afternoon. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said quietly, "for everything. The ultimatum, the threats, not believing you about her. You were being manipulated by a professional con artist, sweetheart. She knew exactly how to exploit your weaknesses." "The gambling?" he said shamefully. "I thought I could control it. I thought I could win back what I'd lost." "We'll get you help for that. There are programs, counselors who specialize in addiction." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I almost lost you. I almost gave away everything Dad built for us." I reached over and took his hand the first time we touched with real affection in months. "But you didn't. We're still here. We're still family. And we're going to get through this together." As we sat in the growing darkness, I felt Henry's presence somehow, as if he was watching over us both. The predator who had targeted our family was defeated. The lies had been exposed. The truth, as painful as it was, had set us free. But the real healing would come tomorrow, and in all the tomorrows after that, 6 months later. I stood in the same kitchen where Kendra had threatened me. But everything felt different now. The morning sun streamed through Henry's garden windows, illuminating the faces of the people who truly mattered. Darius and his new therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, who had become a regular visitor as my son worked through his addiction and trauma. "How are you feeling about today, Doctor?" Chen asked Darius as she accepted a cup of coffee from me. Darius took a deep breath, his hands steadier than they'd been in months. "Nervous, but ready. I need to face this." Today was Kendra's sentencing hearing. After 6 months of legal proceedings, plea bargains, and testimony from her previous victims, she was finally going to face justice for her crimes. The baby had been born 3 months ago. A little girl who was now in the custody of Richard Blackwood's ex-wife, who had surprisingly stepped forward to raise the child despite everything. "The important thing to remember," Dr. Chen continued, "is that her sentencing isn't about revenge. It's about accountability and protecting future victims." I nodded, though privately I felt a deep satisfaction knowing that the woman who had tried to destroy my family would spend the next 5 years in prison. The fraud and extortion charges across multiple states had added up quickly once other victims had come forward. After Dr. Chen left, Darius and I sat in comfortable silence in Henry's garden. My son looked healthier than he had in years. The gambling addiction support group he joined had not only helped him stay clean for 6 months, but had also introduced him to people who understood his struggles. "Mom, I need to tell you something," he said, setting down his coffee cup. My heart clenched involuntarily. After everything we'd been through, I still worried about new revelations, new problems. "I've been thinking about Dad a lot lately," he continued, "about how he tried to warn us about Kendra and how I didn't listen." I reached for his hand. "Your father understood that some lessons have to be learned the hard way. He also understood something I'm just now figuring out." Darius looked at me with clear eyes, free of the shame and desperation that had clouded them for so long. He understood that real strength isn't about controlling everything around you. It's about admitting when you're wrong and asking for help when you need it. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a familiar figure, Marcus Carter, the private investigator who had helped expose Kendra's lies. "Mrs. Walker," Marcus said when I opened the door, "I hope you don't mind the unannounced visit. I have some news I thought you'd want to hear in person." We invited him into the living room, where he settled into the chair that had once been Henry's favorite, the same chair where Kendra had sat when she threatened me all those months ago. But now it felt reclaimed, part of our family space again. "The FBI has been in touch," Marcus said, pulling out a thick folder. "Your case against Kendra led them to a much larger investigation.
They have identified at least 12 other victims across 7 states going back 8 years. Darius whistled low.
12 other families she destroyed. 12 that they've found so far. The pattern was always the same. Target vulnerable men, create dependency through financial manipulation, then extort their families. Your mother's decision to fight back broke the cycle. I felt a chill thinking about all those other families, other sons who had been manipulated, other mothers who had been threatened and intimidated.
What happens to them now? I asked.
Many of them will finally get justice. Some of the money she extorted over the years has been traced and frozen. It's not everything, but it's something. Marcus handed me a letter from his folder. This came through the FBI. It's from one of her previous victims in Denver. He wanted to thank you.
With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. The letter was brief but heartfelt. Dear Mrs. Walker, I don't know you, but you saved my life. For 3 years, I lived under Amara Morrison's threats. Paying her money, I didn't have to keep quiet about mistakes I'd made. The shame was killing me slowly.
When the FBI told me she'd finally been caught because one brave mother refused to be intimidated, I cried for the first time in years. Thank you for having the courage I couldn't find. Thank you for stopping her. David Martinez. I wiped tears from my eyes as I finished reading. Darius put his arm around my shoulders. You did that, Mom. You saved that man, and probably others we'll never even know about. After Marcus left, I found myself alone in the house for the first time in months. Darius had gone to his support group meeting, and the silence felt peaceful rather than lonely. I walked through each room, remembering not just the pain of the past year, but the strength I'd discovered in myself. In Henry's office, I sat at his desk and opened the drawer where I'd found his address book all those months ago. But this time, I pulled out a different item, a letter Henry had written to me before his heart attack, sealed in an envelope marked, for Maris, when she needs to remember who she is. I'd found it weeks after his funeral, but had never been able to bring myself to open it. Now, with Kendra's threat finally neutralized and my relationship with Darius healing, I felt ready. I felt Henry's familiar handwriting filled 2 pages. My dearest Maris, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're probably feeling lost and alone. I need you to know something. You are the strongest person I've ever known. Not because you never fall down, but because you always get back up. I know our marriage wasn't perfect. I know I sometimes let you carry too much of the burden when Darius was growing up. When money was tight. When life got complicated. But I watched you handle every challenge with grace and determination. And I fell in love with you more deeply every single day. If someone tries to make you feel small after I'm gone, remember this. You built our family. You protected our son. You created the home that became our sanctuary. You are not weak. You are not naive. And you are not easily broken. Trust your instincts, my love. They've never led you astray. And remember that love, real love, never comes with ultimatums or threats. Real love supports, protects, and believes in you even when you don't believe in yourself. You're going to be fine. Maris Walker. More than fine. You're going to be magnificent. Your devoted husband, Henry. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my jewelry box next to the wedding ring I still wore. Henry had known somehow that I would need those words. He had understood that his death might leave me vulnerable to predators like Kendra, and he had prepared me as best he could. That evening, Darius returned from his meeting with news that made my heart full. I've been offered a promotion at work, he said, settling beside me on the couch. Regional manager. It comes with a significant raise and better benefits. That's wonderful, sweetheart. It also comes with a lot of travel. I wanted to make sure you'd be okay with me accepting it. I smiled, remembering the broken man who had sat in this same spot 6 months ago, unable to make any decision without Kendra's manipulation. I'll be fine, Darius. Better than fine. I'm thinking of doing some traveling myself. Maybe visiting those places your father and I always talked about but never got to see. Really, that sounds amazing. We talked for hours that night about our plans, our hopes for the future, the lessons we'd learned from our ordeal. As Darius prepared to leave for his own apartment, the healthy independence he had established in recovery, he hugged me tightly. I love you, Mom. Thank you for fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself. After he left, I walked through my house one more time, turning off lights and checking locks. This house that Kendra had tried to steal, that represented everything Henry and I had built together, felt truly mine again. In our bedroom, I stood before the mirror and looked at myself honestly. The woman staring back at me was different from the broken widow who had opened the door to threats and ultimatums 6 months ago. She was stronger, wiser, more confident in her own worth. I had learned something important during those dark months. Family isn't about blood or obligation or guilt. It's about people who choose to love and support each other, who show up in crisis, who tell the truth even when it's painful. I had also learned that sometimes the people who hurt us the most do us an unexpected favor. Kendra's cruelty had forced me to find strength I didn't know I possessed. Her lies had revealed truths I needed to face. Her threats had taught me that I was far more resilient than anyone, including myself, had imagined. As I prepared for bed, I whispered a thank you to Henry, to the universe, to whatever force had given me the courage to fight back when everything seemed hopeless. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove to myself that Maris Walker was nobody's victim. Tonight, I would sleep peacefully in my own house, surrounded by memories of real love and dreams of the adventures still to come. The predator was caged. The family was healing. The future was bright with possibility, and I was finally, completely, gloriously free. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.